you don't know what a buoy is? I go, a buoy? He goes, a buoy. It's a dead fucking thing that floats in the water. You wouldn't want to find yourself being a buoy now, would you? That he had friends in Boston that I wouldn't want to meet.
Ich habe deshalb abgelehnt, niemals vor dieses Volk hinzutreten und billige Versprechungen.
And I said, leave the property and call the police. He took a couple more steps away, did the same gesture again. Mr. Dufresne stood there in the same spot he did, that he was when he introduced himself. Then I think I took out my cell phone to call the police. And he walked up by the fence, and I'm there. Please leave my property, get off my property. And he walked to the right onto Prescott's property, onto Prescott's driveway to the right of the fence. And he said, I'm not on your fucking property now, what are you gonna do about it? Then Mr. Dufresne said, I have to apologize to my friend, he's kind of a hothead. And he walked up to Pedranti. I didn't hear what he said to him, and then he kind of held Mr. Pedranti by the arm, and they were walking up the driveway, so I followed them up the driveway, probably 35, 40 feet behind them, and they walked to the top of the right-of-way, took a right, and went up to the next house, and went down the driveway of the next house, which is Ms. Ladino's home. I was met with Ms. Ladino in the parking lot, in her driveway, and then they went into the house. Another picnic bench was thrown through the big window to the middle of the house, and then the door was kicked in. So I went to the house to see what other damage. When I walked into the house, it had this pretty bad odor. I couldn't figure it out because I was there the day before. It smelled like an animal died or something in there. And after investigating, someone urinated all over the house and took feces and went it all over the walls. The house, things that were cleaned up were thrown aside. Some of the windows were smashed from the inside of the house out. There was glass on the outside of the house. It was pretty much a wreck from the day that I left it before.
Tell me, who cleaned up the property?
I did.
Condition?
I did.
How did you go about cleaning your property?
First, I removed the items from the windows, and I went to where I had my tools. I had tools that I brought over. I had like not a hoe, but it's like a thing that you cut ice with. You know, you can do like edging. So I scraped the walls, in the window that had the feces on it. I smashed out that window with the feces on it that was already smashed, and scraped it. And there was shirts and an extra sweatshirt that was dirty. Kind of swept it up into that with one of the brooms, and then I left the island, went to True Value Hardware, and picked up some spray bottles and some bleach and some rags, and went back to the island and continued to clean it up. I never saw anything like it when you pour the bleach on the floor. They were wood floors. The floors just bubbled and kind of gave off a gas. It was kind of strange. Urine, I guess urine, pouring go next. On the doorknob, it was like scraped on the doorknob, so if you went to go to the door, you get it in your hands. And also on the toilet seat, like there was a toilet in that house, and it was like smeared on like the seat and the white part behind the wall in the bathroom. And also one spot on the outside of the house was smeared on like the door. It looked like someone picked it up with a rag, did stuff with it.
With respect to the urine that you found in the home, tell me the location of the urine.
The urine was pretty much dead center in the room.
Which room was that?
The living room with the fireplace, it had like bricks, and it was all against like where the brick, onto the brick, you could see some because it was dust and stuff. You could see where there was a stream that was on that, and then it was all in front of like, almost like they were taking, peeing on a wall or something.
Now, Mr. Hyman, you mentioned some broken windows as well. Can you tell me approximately how many windows were broken?
Almost every window.
When you say that, how many windows were there?
15
Phone calls.
within the next month.
How many phone calls did you receive of that nature in total?
4 that I can remember.
Can you tell me what was said to you throughout these other 4 phone calls?
And another time, they just said you're dead. Then another time they left me hanging, like they said hello a few times. Go back to where you came from. Okay, I hung up the phone again.
Mr. Hyman, prior to purchasing your property within the Hemlocks, had you ever received any phone calls of that nature?
No, no.
What did you do as a result of receiving these phone calls?
I contacted the local authorities, called the police.
What did you do next?
The police informed me there was really nothing that they could do about any phone calls or any threats on the phone call, and they instructed me to call the phone company, which I did. I called the phone company, and they put me in contact with their fraud department, and they told me that after each call, when I received a call,
Objection sustained.
Just what did you do next, Mr. Hyman? Not what was told you. Can you just tell us what you did next?
I was informed I called the phone company, and they told me how to trace a call.
Did you in fact trace the phone calls?
Yes.
How did you trace the phone calls?
After the phone call ended, you just hit the dial button, go back to a dial tone, hit *57, and then it would come on the phone and said the last phone call that you received has been logged and recorded
Who was the logged and recorded with?
with the phone company.
Were you ever able to trace where those phone calls came from?
Yes, they
Where did those
told,
phone calls originate from?
they told me after the 3rd time that
Objection. Objection sustained.
Now what did someone tell you, Mr. Hyman? Were you able to trace where those phone calls came from?
yes,
Where did those phone calls originate from?
phone booth at Savage Plaza or Lakeville, Massachusetts.
Where is Savas Plaza in relation to where your property is in the Hemlocks?
It's, we passed it yesterday on the Buick's boat. A mile and a half from the main entrance road of the Hemlocks.
Were you ever able to identify the voice on the other end of the line of these phone calls that you received?
All I could just, it was a male voice, and they kind of disguised it.
Mr. Hyman, how did it make you feel to receive these phone calls?
I really couldn't believe what was going on. It was pretty appalled. And then when I called for help, the police couldn't do anything, so it was kind of, I don't know, I was wondering what the hell was going on, to be honest with you.
What's a kite, Mr. Hyman?
It's a real pretty offensive word to a Jewish person.
What is your religious faith?
Jewish.
Can you give us just a little background of your Jewish faith?
Yeah, I'm raised in the Jewish faith till the age of, at the Hebrew school. Was bar mitzvahed, and I'm pretty much raised in the Jewish faith, celebrate Hanukkah, and I'm not a kosher person, but I'm a practicing Jew.